are now in Zelve Open Air Museum. Before we explore this cave village, I'd like to tell you about chronology, like who made these caves, starting from beginning 2000 BC till today, till Tuesday, 2016. So first, again, we should talk about the Hittites. But before the Hittites, there were Assyrian trade colonies here. Assyrian trade colonies came from eastern Turkey to Kayseri city. They have a big trade center there. They were bartering, of course. There was no money yet, and they were taking like marble from here to east, bringing metals here, as they need metals to carve into the volcanic ash and make their houses. So first settlement, as a settlement, not nomadic, it's the Hittites again. Came from Caucasia, but their capital city is about 3 hours driving distance away from here, nearly 140 miles to the north. If you go to their capital city, which is Hattushash, you can't see any caves because it's outside of Cappadocia region. The houses there were made with stone foundations, modern brick walls, and timber roof. Modern brick and timber is not very strong to survive for 1,000 years. They're all fallen. You'll only see foundations there, but other than those, they have beautiful gates to enter their cities. They have beautiful temples. They made reliefs of their deities on a solid mountain surface. As the rock is hard, it didn't wash away. So 2000 BC, they settled down there. 250 years later, in 1750 BC, they came to Cappadocia. And they started to make the first cave houses. But they didn't make them all. They just made some enough for their population. The other countries, which I'll tell, after the Hittites, also made some caves. So how can you tell which is Hittite, which is recent? Let's say Ottomans were set up in 1299. So if the cave was made by the Ottomans, it is maximum 700 years old. But if the cave is from Hittite period, it is minimum 3,200 year old, because Hittites ruled from 2000 BC to 12th century BC for 800 years. And there's no way to tell about which one, who made it, because it's all look the same. The only idea we have is the height of the cave, and because there are nearly 100,000 caves, state doesn't make an effort to find the age of each cave because there's nearly 100,000 of it. But we have an idea about the height of it. When the first people settled down here, Hittites, there was lynx here, the wild cat, wild boars, wolves. That's why the caves were made high, and they made the footholds as big as my hand to climb into them. But later on, as more people settled down, wild animals had to abandon the city centers, and there was no reason to have the caves high anymore because it's difficult. So they made them on the ground level. So if it's high, it's older. If it's down on the ground, it's younger. But younger is not yesterday. It's also minimum couple of 100 years, or maybe 1 or 2,000 years old. Sometimes you see two caves. One is bottom, one is above, and they have an interior tunnel connecting them. This time they make the first one at the bottom, and interconnecting second one. They make the second floor. That time the top one is younger. What I'm saying is a single cave itself, individual, and footholds together is older ones. So Hittites have an important place in the world history. We talked about this before, just to remind you. They went to Egypt. They went to Syria to take over Syria, and Egyptians were there as well. They fought each other to take over Syria. The war was difficult. Both sides lost many soldiers. In the end, they stopped the war, not to lose anymore, because they were going to weak against other countries' armies. They finished the war, but not only by words, it was officially written down, and this is the first written treaty in the world history. The date is more or less 1260, 1280, 85 BC. Ramses II was the king of the Egyptians. Murtavidili was the king of the Hittites. This document of the first treaty of the world history is displayed in Istanbul Archaeological Museum and in Egypt as well, but they say different things. The one here says Hittites were victorious. The one in Egypt says Egyptians were victorious. But I support Hittites, of course, because I'm from here. So from 2000 BC to 12th century BC, they were here. In 12th century BC, Phrygians took over here. Phrygins. You may know Phrygians with their famous king Midas touch. He wanted to be very rich. He said, I want to be very rich, to Zeus. And it was accepted. Wherever he touched turned into gold. But then he wanted to eat something. He touched the bread, he touched the apple, all became gold. He couldn't eat. And he said, forgive me, make me a normal man again. And the God told him to wash himself in the stream and he will be a normal man. The stream, actually, it's in the western Turkey, passes through the places we visited, like Pergamon, that area. There's a stream called as Copper Stream. Why it's Copper Stream? Because there's copper in it. And they say there's copper in it because King Midas washed himself in it. All the metals he has went into the stream. It's a myth about him. Another myth about him, he's got donkey ears. There was a music competition. Apollo played an instrument, the god, versus this king. Sorry, not versus the king, versus a human being. Midas was a jury to decide who's the best. But Midas voted for the human being, not for God. So he got angry. He said, how come a normal human being plays better than me? You don't know anything about music because you have donkey ears. So he made his ears like donkey ears. There's a picture of him. He looks like that. That's why there's a myth about him like this. These are all myths, but King Midas is a true man, exists. We have a tomb
His
for
tomb's
him.
here, yeah.
Remember the monumental tomb? Room in the ground, and they make a pile of stones, like a hill on the top of it. So there is one of him nearby Ankara. We call it as Gordion. Gordion was the name of their capital city nearby Ankara, and the legend Gordion knot comes from them. Whoever could open this tight knot will be the ruler of the world. And according to legend, Alexander the Great found it and cut it.
He cheated. He cheated. He grabbed the sword. He just
Yeah,
cut it.
he
Everybody else was
didn't.
trying to untie it.
Yeah, he didn't. He just found easy way. Lazy. So from 12th century BC to 6th century BC, Phrygians were here making more cave houses as they had a bigger population. Then around 560 BC, again it's the Persian Empire. As they took over Ephesus area, they took over here as well. This was another satrapy, and they ruled here too, as well as they ruled in the Ephesus until 335 BC, which was the time Alexander the Great attacked. And we already spoke about this. I'm passing through. He went to India. That's where he died at the age of 33. Then 5 of his commanders took over, but Cappadocia remained independent. Cappadocia has an independent kingdom up to about 1st century AD. That time the Roman Empire took over here, and the Romans ruled here till 395 AD. In 395, they split in two as West and East. West was Catholic, East was Orthodox. Here is Eastern Roman Empire, which today we call as Byzantine Empire. From 4th century to 11th century, Byzantines were here. In the 11th century, Turks came from north of China. Why did they come? China was a very strong power against them. Sometimes they intermarried to stop the fights. But when the married couple dies, the agreement is over. Plus, cold, very cold, not very suitable for farming. They set up some countries there. You may hear the famous ones: Gökturks, Uyghur Turks, Han Turks. These were some Turkish countries in the north of China. But they all collapsed. They make a new one. They move another place. But they didn't want to move anymore. They wanted a territory to make a country. And that journey started in the 7th century AD. Turks moved from there. They set up some countries in Balkans, in Black Sea, above Black Sea, but for Anatolia. The first Turkish country was set up in 11th century. That time, more than 100,000 Turks moved at the same time and came through eastern Turkey to Anatolia. They fought with the Byzantines, defeated them, and entered Anatolia, set up this country called as Seljuk Turks, Seljuk. That was the first Turkish country for Anatolia. But Istanbul was still Constantinopolis, belonged to Byzantines. Then Seljuk Turks were defeated by Mongolians in 13th century. Governments disappear, but what happens to the people? For example, Hittites were finished by Khmers. Did they kill each Hittite one by one? Of course they did not. Hittite government fell down, but the people remained. That's why we call ourselves as Anatolian. Sometimes we are proud to say we are Turks, but also proud to say we are Anatolian, because Anatolia is the land where many people mixed. Like Armenians were living in Kayseri, Greeks were here, Arabs were down in the southeast. So they all mixed. That's why when you look at a Turk, you can see a Turk, a Hittite, a Greek, an Armenian all together because we have the cultural harmony. They live together, not isolated. They were in harmony. That's nice, of course, to have the influence, the cultural richness from other countries, and they also, of course, have some influence from the Turks. It's all the same for everybody. So, the government of the Seljuk Turks fell down, but the Turks remained as well. They didn't go anywhere. There were tribes. There were different Turkish tribes in different parts of the Anatolia, which is the land of Turkey. And the Ottomans was one of the tribes set up in 1299 as a tribe. But they got stronger in 1300. They took over the other tribes, or willingly the other tribes joined them. After they took over Istanbul in 1453, it was the end of Byzantine Empire, and it was the start of Ottomans as an empire. Before that, it was a small tribe, we can say. And the Ottoman era, of course, Greeks didn't move anywhere. They were still here. That's why we have a church, we'll see, and a mosque in the same place. Great to see, because we see the tolerance to each other. Although they were Muslims and Christians, they managed to live together without any problems for nearly 1,000 years. Not only the Turks are saying this. If you speak with the Greeks, especially the elder ones, who know about this, maybe they have also had to move from here to there, they'll say they were like brothers and sisters. They lived like this up to like 20th century. In 20th century, because of the war between the Turks and the Greeks, later on we will talk more in details about this. Briefly, the Turks living in Greece had to come back to Turkey. The Greeks living here had to go back to Greece. This happened after the Republic was set up. Atatürk, our great leader, in 1923, he changed the government system. First, he was the commander in the Independence War, and then he changed the government system from monarchy into democratic secular republic, and he made many revolutions. He changed the alphabet to increase the reading and writing people. He made railways in the country. He opened museums in Turkey. He gave the right to women for voting. Turkey is one of the first countries in the world to give the right to women for voting in 1920s. There were 19 women in Turkish parliament as representatives. That was the highest number, I think, among all the European countries that time. And there's a book like this telling about his revolutions. He changed the calendar to make it the same. We use Christian calendar, not to be confusing with the rest of the world. Before Ottoman era was Islamic calendar. He paid all the debts of the Ottomans. He made profit. He fought with many countries, but all the fights was for defense, for independence. After the war, he set great relations with all those countries he fought with, and I just remember one of his saying. It's long, but I just tell you the summary. You know, Gallipoli War, it was big. Ottomans fought against British. Anzacs, we say. Australian, New Zealanders also fought for England in Gallipoli. About 150,000 casualty from Turkish side, 150,000 more or less, roughly, from British Anzac side. So, although 150,000 were lost, he said this to the mothers. You can see it in Gallipoli. He says mothers to Anzacs who sent their sons, their heroes, from faraway countries. Wipe away your tears now. Your sons, after having lost their lives here, they have become our sons as well. And now they are lying in our bosom in this country of peace. Together with our own sons, they are lying in our bosom. It's longer. I just tell a summary. I mean, isn't that great? Imagine as a mom,
Yes.
your son comes from
That's
the other part of the world to a country to fight about which you have no idea.
right.
And your son dies there. You even can't see his dead body, don't know where he is. And the commander, the leader of that country, speaks to you, saying, "Don't worry, he is now our son." I mean, it's really emotional,
yeah,
right?
it's very.
So that's why we love him. The major change he made was government system from monarchy to democratic secular republic. That's why, because it's secular in Turkey, you can see women with scarves or without scarves. You can see them with shorts, miniskirts, you can see them covered. It's totally their choice. They can dress as they wish. Alcohol is forbidden in Islam religion, but Turkey, although it's 98% is Muslim, it's not an Islamic state. That's why you can find liquor shops anywhere. No need to show any license or something. You can just go buy and drink it. No question about it. So people are free, which is good, of course. Because if there's a God, he wouldn't like people to pray by force. It will be meaningful if they do it by heart, I think. That's why if you're a Muslim, one of the best countries to live would be Turkey, as you would have your freedom here to live as you wish. After Republic was set up, after the population exchange, Turks alone themselves continued living here till 1952. Just 64 years ago they were living here, but I'm talking about this museum here. Outside, next day we will see some people still in the cave. There are still people living in the caves, but they have water and electricity. So why did they move out of here? Imagine in 1950s, some people lived in the mansions. They had tap water, maybe even electricity, but the guys here still had to carry water from river to home with the potteries, like the Hittites did 4,000 years ago. Second more important reason is the caves started to fall down. The best advantage living here is the temperature. Doesn't matter how cold or hot it is outside, temperature remains about more or less 60-65 Fahrenheit all year round. But now you can't feel it exactly when you go on these ones. Still, if it's hot outside, you'll feel cool inside, or if it's cold outside, you'll feel warm inside, but not exactly 60 Fahrenheit, because we have missing walls. See, we can see interior part of the cave.
Yeah.
How can you see it? There was a wall in the front, of course, when it was a house. There was a small entry covered with a wood door and a thick pile wool carpet behind it to insulate the temperature inside. As the walls started falling down, they thought this is not safe anymore. They evacuated them and gave them new houses outside. That's the main reason for moving. And then they made this a museum, and now this is in the World Heritage List. It's a UNESCO. Once again, in Turkey, there are 15 UNESCO sites. I said Cappadocia has 4 museums, but it's not counted as 4. It is one of the UNESCO sites with its 4 museums in it. So other than Cappadocia, there are 14 other UNESCO sites in Turkey. Lastly, because it's difficult to make a cave, it takes years, because they just use small tools, carve into it. Difficult. Yeah, it's soft inside, as you said. Outside gets solid, but inside is soft, but still too difficult. It takes years. That's why they shared the kitchens, food storages, and stables. They were communal, but they had their private living rooms. So one kitchen is there, shared by the families around it. Another one is there, shared by the families around it. One last thing is, you see small holes on the wall?
Yes.
They are pigeon houses. People raised thousands of pigeons in Cappadocia.
That's what those are.
Yeah.
I saw pictures when we were at home, and I didn't know what. I thought, oh,
Those
that's
aren't the
where
climbing
they,
ones.
No, I thought that's where they maybe stored things. I didn't know. I really didn't know.
The idea is, they were farmers, and as a farmer they need strong fertilizer. And back then there was no fertilizer like we have today, so they thought pigeon dropping is very rich in minerals, but one pigeon can only give you this much poop, so you need thousands of them. These are just some samples. We have a valley 2.5 mile long called Pigeon Valley, because it's full of pigeon houses. Thousands really. They ate them as well, but they also collect their droppings to fertilize the vineyards. They did this mainly up to 1960s. Afterwards they found new fertilizers, but still it's used by some elder people who are traditional, or for flowers in the garden they use pigeon droppings again still, but compared to 100 years ago it's much less. And plus, pigeons are smart birds. If you can train a pigeon well, it can fly long distances. That's why they race them today. In the past they were used to send messages before Facebook. So that's like a post office as well, we can say. So this is about little chronological order of Cappadocia, the civilizations. So we'll now start exploring this. but some parts we are not allowed to go in. Like that side, you can see it's roped off, no trespassing.
Right.
But we'll see the caves back there if you like to, using the path on the left instead of going that way, because it's
Okay.
got serious cracks in them. State put steel nets to outer walls, and they color the steel with the same color of the rock, so it can blend in. But it's such a big region, 5 cities in it, and nearly 100,000 caves. Not very easy to cover every cave with steel nets in one day, so it takes time, of course. Here it's not done yet, but some parts you will see they did it. It's like in Clara Canyon, for example. So we can start if you like.
We let it sink back up. It will take a second. Well, that was a long one.